Mom Who Knows Nada. My name is Brianna, and this is the Mama Knows Nada podcast. We brought Claire back to discuss her profession with us. She's going to tell us all about her business, Blissfully Rested, and how she came to be a sleep coach. So welcome back, Claire. Super stoked to learn about this. I didn't personally sleep train, but I know people who have. So it's always interesting to get the perspectives
yes,
and understand. So let's get right to it. How did you get into sleep coaching?
Yeah, so first of all, so excited to be here. This is a topic I feel like I can talk on and on about, and probably mildly obsessed a little bit with sleep for myself and for others. So thank you.
It's a good thing to do.
Yeah, we all need our sleep. Mm-hmm. So as far as how I got into it, I feel like it's kind of a roundabout story, but funny at the same time. So I like to tell a little story back when I was pregnant with my first. He was unplanned, so I was kind of freaking out about everything and shocked, needless to say. That's kind of a story for another time. But I remember having a conversation with one of my best friends at the time, or best friends, and one of the things I brought up was like, how am I going to do all this? Not so much, or motherhood, of course, but I said, the lack of sleep. How am I going to deal with, not being able to sleep? Like, you don't get it. I'm a person that needs their sleep. So it sounds trivial and kind of funny looking back at it. Like, this was the thing of all things I was thinking about. But it kind of comes, I kind of laugh about it because it kind of comes full circle to what I do now. Like, wow, obviously sleep meant a lot to me. And, never, if you were to ask me a couple of years ago that I would be, or what I'm doing now, I'd be like, no, that doesn't sound like, a career I'd be doing necessarily. So kind of fell into it. But, yeah, so we struggled with it's funny, I was so concerned. And then sure enough, we did struggle with my first, who I said is a 6-year-old now. Yeah, struggled, didn't really have any kind of plan in place. I was the typical, I'll Google it, try something a few days, didn't work, would write it off, and then didn't really follow through with anything. Probably a lot of us can relate to. Yeah, so I started with him. And then down the road, about 4 or 5 years later, had my daughter. And again, didn't really have a plan in place, but we knew we needed to do something different because kind of you live, you learn.
Yes, amen to that.
Yeah, we knew we didn't want to go down that same path again, was struggling. We didn't know what her demeanor would be and everything, but we knew like, okay, we need to kind of come up with a game plan. So, like many moms, scour the internet, try to find something that relates to you, that you feel comfortable with. And I did come across, I might be getting ahead of myself, but I did come across Sleep Sense. It worked really well. And then they are really good about training entrepreneurs, moms, to start their own business. And they do really extensive training in the sleep department. So, long story short, that kind of takes me to where I am now, is getting into that and working from home and being with my 2 kids, which was a goal for a long time.
So what was it about the Sleep Sense program that resonated with you specifically?
Yeah, so again, there's so much information out there.
Totally.
So easy to get overwhelmed. Some people can maybe relate to. So my husband and I weren't really on the same page as far as training methods and what we were comfortable with.
Know that game?
He was kind of like, at least with my son, he needs to cry it out. Like, that's the only thing that's going to work for him. Yeah. And I think probably us as the moms were like, ugh, like.
Yeah, so hard. That's hard.
Yeah, it could work for some people. I've known people that have done it. They're like, yeah, it's the only thing that works. That's what I did. But I couldn't really relate to it, and I couldn't make myself do that. I would try for a little bit and then again give up and be like, okay, I need to do something else.
Yeah. So
I guess what you said about Sleep Sense being different, or why I chose it, I really liked it because it gives parents options. So it's not just like, do this and that's it. The parent could have a say. There's different ways you can get to the same solution. So at the end of the day, if we're not comfortable with it or it's not clear, we're not going to do it.
Right.
So both of those things it did for me. So that's why I ended up, and talking to a friend that did the same method, it just kind of reinforced like, okay, now I know someone that did it and I like what I'm reading. So I kind of decided to go all in and not play around anymore with my daughter.
No, I love that. I mean, there was a certain point in time, with my son, like we tried to do like a sleep training thing, like, read the book and whatever. And to your point, like I just couldn't listen to him cry. I think I got like a couple minutes in one night and I was like, this is not going to work for me.
Right.
And then I was frustrated because he wasn't sleeping and the sleep training thing wasn't working. So I was just curious to like, how you picked it and got to stick with it. Is it different from other approaches in any specific ways?
specific ways. So I feel like if you're to look up like sleep training, I almost don't even like that term because we'll get to this later, but I feel like it is kind of a blanket statement. What people associate sleep training must mean this. But
Gotcha.
as far as it being different, yeah, I think the options that it gives parents, you kind of feel empowered to make your own decisions. I think also a lot of methods at the end of the day probably do have a lot of similarities as far as the goal being that you want independent sleep, but there's different ways to get to independent sleep. It's not realistic to expect that in a couple days. So this is kind of a little bit more of a drawn out method. But to me, it's like, okay, if it's going to set a good, kind of like a good foundation, I'm willing to take longer to work on it than just a couple days. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, it gives parents a say. It looks at the whole child rather than just like treating a symptom.
Oh, okay.
So that's what I liked about it.
What misconceptions would you like to address about baby and toddler sleep?
Yeah, misconceptions. So there's a few, probably more than a few that come to mind. When it comes to their sleep. So some of it is that sometimes parents will write it off that they'll just grow out of it, or kind of like you don't need to do anything. It'll just eventually fall into place. And I've been on that end of the spectrum. So with my first, we didn't technically do any kind of formal training in the beginning. But then again, he was, maybe like 4 years old. So we were actually seeing like some kind of improvement.
Oh, wow.
And, what's interesting too is that, that I'm implementing some of these things with the words out. I'm implementing some of these things with him now as a 6-year-old. So I did it with my 11-month-old, and then I'm doing it with him later, and it's helping. So I guess it's almost like, are you willing to wait that time? Is it okay for you, or do you want to kind of take action? So yeah, they might kind of grow out of things, but in the meantime, why not take those steps too? So that would be one of them that you don't need to take any action. It's eventually going to happen or fall into place. You said misconceptions?
Yeah.
Was that your other misconceptions? Obviously, I hear a lot when it comes to this subject, and I like to take it right on, is the cry it out method is what people always think. And that it's going to break the parent-child attachment. That's a huge thing. Yeah, to overcome of why people don't even touch the subject, don't even try it. So, that's one of the things that, again, there's different options out there. When we hear sleep training, we think usually, cry it out. This is what you got to do. Almost like you don't have a say in it. That's the only other option. But like I said, I've been on both sides of the coin, and I can relate that, if that's all I was doing was telling parents to close the door and put their child away, like I wouldn't need that extensive training, all the, the reading the books, the research, like if that's all I was doing, not all that would be involved. So it's much more to it. Again, looking at the whole child, how to react. There's so much that goes into it.
So much that goes into it. Yeah. Is there anything that you hear parents say or have clients have said to you that you just like makes you cringe?
I think that kind of, again, goes back to the methods. Maybe.
Oh, the misconceptions. That makes sense.
And then misconceptions. I'm trying to think of some others. Cringe, yeah. Different from each family. I think probably just the breaking the parent-child attachment. Is it going to be cry it out? Somehow this is going to hurt the family in one way or another. So yeah, there can be a lot to overcome, but I'll have to think about that, because I think there were a few other things when it comes to if it cringes. But if those pop up, I'll definitely address those again. There's probably there's a handful.
I'm sure there's something that someone said and you're just like, what the heck? But I totally get like off the cuff. Sometimes it's hard to think about. What about like telling signs that your child may need like a sleep intervention? I like the intervention, right? Yeah. So I think, again, that's going to be different for each family and what the family can, oh my goodness, every time this happens to me, what they can deal with. So I think what one family might complain of a problem that's going on for months or years, someone else is like done with it in a week, and they're like, no, we need to fix this. So, but I think telling signs would be, is everyone thriving at the end of the day? Is everyone doing well, even when it comes to mood, to eating, to all of this? I mean,
I think a lot of times, think of it like if we miss, a night's sleep, or if we don't feel good, we don't eat as well the next day. I know I'm usually like looking for sugar, looking for something not as good to eat.
Same.
So, I mean, why are babies any different? Sometimes I think it's just going back to the basics of, if you're sleeping well, look at the other things that it can improve your mood. Maybe the baby's not as crying as much during the day, or toddlers, maybe the tantrums, you're not going to see that as much during the day if they're sleeping well. And
No, I like that. And I think sometimes we forget about the basics, like, as adults. Let's go back to square one. Are there any, I think, go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say, I think I meant to bring up colic. Colic is such an elusive term that, if the baby's at a certain age, especially the newborns, if they're acting a certain way, it's colic. But if you look it up, it's such a blanket statement of what colic, even means. It's not really one thing. Is it food? Is it this? Is it that? But again, when we have sleep, it can help so many things. Obviously, feeding well and all those things, it all plays a part. But sometimes sleep is like one of the last things we talk about or we look at, and it's really a core, just as important as eating well or anything.
Well, yeah, your body needs time and space to reset, right? I mean,
for sure.
Are there general milestones that babies and toddlers should hit, quote unquote, for healthy sleep patterns? Is there anything we should be looking for with that?
Again, it's definitely different for each age group. There is no here they all need to be doing this. So with newborns, obviously some of the goals that you're looking at, and I'm working with a newborn right now, but there's 3, I guess you could say goals to work toward or things to practice. And one of them is getting full feeds, especially during the day. So we know we have those tired babies that I've had that too, where they're snoozing and they're coming off and they're not really taking in a good feed. So trying to work on, quality feeds is one of the things we look at. Setting up some kind of routine or schedule so we're not kind of all over the place, because that's going to help for down the road too, having some kind of schedule. And then gently kind of encouraging the independent sleep, which is not to be confused with what an older child would be doing, but again, laying down, let's see if they can kind of get themselves back to sleep again, rather than rushing and trying to intervene right away. But of course, with a newborn, I just told a mom this the other day, or today actually, it was kind of panicking a little bit. She wanted to see certain things happening. I was like, this is the time, if anything, to throw rules out the window. You have a newborn, we're just practicing everything. We're not being strict. And I think that kind of takes the weight off of parents too. Oh yeah, a newborn, we can't expect a lot of them. If we look at children a little bit older, then that's going to be a little bit different. They can start to, consolidate their sleep more at night. You can see more patterns of longer stretches of sleep, where newborn, that wasn't happening. So we can expect a little bit more of them, but still, depends on the age. And then toddlers, I feel, again, sometimes that's a trivial, you're asking my child to sleep 10 and 12 hours. Well, why are you asking that, or why that number? But if we look it up, really for developmentally, for quite through the school age, 10 and 12 hours is what's required of them to have healthy, restorative sleep. Even my 6-year-old, I think if you're to look it up, he needs about 10, 11 hours to actually feel good and function. So it is something to it when we say 10, 11 hours for a young one.
No, that makes sense. And I like that what you said, because a newborn, you're still trying to figure out their nuances and what they need. Those first 3 months, they're super, super tricky, because they're still getting into the world, and you're figuring out exactly everything changes every day, how much they eat, how much they sleep, how much they poop, how much they pee. So you got to give yourself a little bit of grace there, and just kind of roll with it and just pay attention. You know what I mean?
And you get used to one thing and they change it up the next day and they're doing something else.
One of the things that helped me one time when I was pregnant, one of my friends said to me, she's like, just make sure your kid knows when it's day and night. Make sure you set up their clock from the get-go. And I was like, oh, I never even thought about that. Exposing them to sunlight, making sure they could see out the window. And that was super helpful, because I know other people whose kids won't would like sleep during the day or like super late into the morning. And I was like, oh, I wonder if they ever expose them to the sun. I know it sounds like a silly little thing, but like,
no, that's what I would suggest too.
like, you know, kind of igniting that circadian rhythm is pretty like, you know, I guess it could be crucial for some kids. I don't know. But what about like breast and bottle feeding? Can this impact like sleep patterns for kids or make it, or babies, young babies? I don't know how old people have a bottle anymore. I forget. My kid has not had a bottle in a year, so I don't remember how long it's like acceptable. Can that impact sleep patterns or make sleeping challenging?
Challenges. So you mean like starting the bottle or giving up a bottle?
Like,
is that what you're
either way, just like both. You know what I mean? Like, does it matter really?
Yeah, so sleep patterns. I think traditionally a breastfed baby is going to get, especially the newborns, are going to get up more. I think the formula does, we've all read before that it sits with them longer just because it's a little bit heavier. So they would be waking up a little bit more if they're a breastfed baby than if they're formula fed. But again, that's kind of a misconception I like to throw out the window, that I do encourage breastfeeding with moms. Like I kind of touched on earlier, the full feed.
Yeah.
So that's important. I'm not telling anybody to stop feeding or stop doing this. So actually it's important, and it's all developmentally too, of when we can slowly wean off, and what the parent personally wants too. Maybe someone wants to keep one feed for months down the road. Maybe someone's like, okay, I'm ready to drop this now. Can you help me? So it's going to be personal preference. But yeah, I think obviously the breastfed babies, we're going to expect them to be up a little bit more and wanting it a little bit more. I know you can, when you said about introducing bottles, I think you can do it pretty early, but that's personal preference too, whether a mom's going back to work and they need to start practicing with bottles or something. I think as early as like 6 weeks, but I think I did that later.
I did mine later too, yeah.
Yeah, and then I think around a year, kind of weaning off it, and not using it to go to sleep or lull to sleep.
That's what it was. Thank you. I couldn't remember when. Yeah. But I do remember when we took the bottle away, my husband was so upset. He was like, how's this kid going to get down? And I was like, oh. But the funny thing was, we did it after he had like his first little cold. So he was about 13 months old. And I was like, stressing about the bottle thing and like sleep and having it be like a comfort thing. And he didn't need it for like 3 or 4 nights because he was sick. And then after that, we just never had to do it again. It was like brilliant. I was like, I couldn't have planned it better.
You like slowly took it away.
Yeah. I was like, because I couldn't remember if that was too early or right on track, like after you go through like certain stages, like I get what people say now, like they forget, like I forget, my kid waking up every 3 hours because he does sleep through the night now. So it's just kind of funny how that happens.
Yeah, it was kind of like one big blur, probably.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, at the moment, and then you're like, when's this ever going to end? And then all of a sudden they like hit a different leap or something, and whatever, and they're capable of something, and I'm like, oh, that's when it ends, and you don't really like notice it until you're like reflecting back. So
it's over,
right?
And you can do things like even if they're still having the bottle, you can do it out in the open. We say like with dinner time, like that's what we do with. My daughter now, so it's not so much part of a sleep thing, like, I have to have it to sleep. So she has dinner and then she has it soon after out with us. So she's still drinking, but it's not like I have to use this to sleep. And that's all age related too, of when you would do that. Maybe you wouldn't do that with a 9-month-old, of course, but a 12-month-old you would. So
I didn't even think about that. See? All the things I didn't know. What about, like, if a parent's nervous about asking for help or consulting a sleep coach, what would you say to them?
So first I say, don't knock it till you try it.
Fair.
Because I've definitely been on both sides of the coin. So I've had the child that did not sleep, that we didn't really have anything implemented. And then I had the child where I did it at around 11 months and saw how it benefited everybody, and it was a way I was comfortable with too. So I think we talked a little bit before on the other segment about things being black and white, or we always feel like, whether it's decisions about how we give birth, right? If it's C-section, if it's natural, feeding, like, how dare you do formula? You should only do this. So not everything is like black and white. So I think there is kind of a middle ground you can find and make it work without just saying, it's not for me. Because I think I meant to say this earlier, but way back, sleep training used to, or I guess sleep in general, there was the two camps of like, there's the attachment parenting and there's the, don't let them cry a peep, pick them up immediately, have them sleep with you. There was that extreme. And then there's the other extreme of crying out, basically. And it was like, it didn't meet. And there wasn't anything in the middle. So that's kind of what helped me make my decision too, was like, more people must feel like this. Maybe they don't want a kid in their bed, but maybe they can't leave them either. There must be something else. So to me, this was like a nice, middle ground of still setting boundaries, but like seeing results too.
Oh, so interesting. What is your take on co-sleeping? If I can,
you're gonna throw that.
I am.
No, I am. So I don't like endorse it in my program, because it kind of answers it for you when I say we're working on independent sleep. Yeah. So like eventually getting themselves back to sleep. But my own kids, especially with my son, when it was like, you don't know what else to do, you don't have anything set in place. We did for probably longer than we wanted to. We did. And then my daughter, until we implemented anything, we had her in our room too. A lot of people, 3 months on, they kicked them out of the room, but we had them past a year, definitely, in our own room and with the bassinet and stuff. I guess, again, I think it's each person's personal preference on that. My motto is usually like, if what you're doing is working for you, then of course, like, keep it up and keep going. I'm not here to like convince anybody to do one way or the other. Yeah. If it's working for you, great. But I think what's important too is that some people might not speak up or, feel that there's a judgment of wanting to change or wanting something different because so-and-so thinks I shouldn't, or it didn't work for my cousin or this or that. So I think at the end of the day too, it's important that mom that might be dealing with those sleepless nights, who knows if she has like postpartum depression going on? Who knows if getting a good night's sleep is really what she needs? So why would we kind of outside go, how dare she, do that or something? So sometimes that's just the thing that not that there's a magical fix, but sometimes that's the thing that she needed to get her through, rough times, into getting some kind of support. Totally. So yeah, I say, if what you're doing now works for you, great, whether it's co-sleeping or whatever, if that, going back to answering your question. But if not, and I'm for safe sleep as well. And sometimes there are risks with having them in the bed at the end of the day, just like any. So you have to look at, you have to look at everything.
All the different facets. I just wanted to throw that in there. But I like that, what you said about,
I turned my light off.
Oh no.
My foot.
That's funny.
I'm like, bye, I'm done.
It's okay. Look at that.
Hopefully you can still see me.
I can still see you.
Okay.
I think it's really important that you also like identified that, you didn't have the skills and the tools now that you do. You know what I mean? So you did it differently, and that's why you're saying, oh, hey, maybe don't do what I did for as long,
Yeah, like it. Yeah. If you know that you can fix it earlier, why not?
I like that. And the other thing I like that you said is, I think co-sleeping is a tricky thing. Like, I never thought I would be the mom that let my kid in my bed. And I'm so that mom. I'm totally the mom who's like, oh, you're not feeling well, like now. And there's definitely like chunks of time when Declan wouldn't sleep without being in bed with us. And this was like as a toddler. And then we've just gone back to like, okay, we're going through this. And then now we're going back to square one, where we're getting in like a better routine and a better, like, let's go back to our basics and what works for us to get him to sleep on his own. But I think
and I totally get that most people are probably like, they do anything to preserve the sleep. Yes. I've been there too. If you're exhausted, you're like, you know what, this is what gets us all to sleep. So I get that desperation of like, this is all I know, or this is the only thing that works. Yep. So
I definitely know moms, and people have talked about it in the podcast, about like one mom, she was saying that her son would only sleep on her for 5 months straight, and it was the only way he would sleep. And she was like, I'm losing my mind. And she was talking about a little bit of postpartum issues, and she ended up sleep training her kid because she's like, I can't, I'm losing my mind. So just to like kind of give examples of like what you're talking about, but it is personal preferences. And even though this co-sleeping thing, and I'm not knocking co-sleeping personally, like my son was in my bed last night because he was sick. Okay, whatever. What are you going to do? But I do think that at a certain point in time, if you don't start healthy sleep pattern, like it takes forever to have that healthy sleep pattern. Like, I look at myself now and I'm like, maybe I need a sleep coach. Because I'm like, why can't I sleep
all of
at
us.
night? I might need to hire you. then my next question, is it ever too late to hire a sleep coach or consult a sleep coach?
And I was gonna back up just a minute. So I was that mom with my first that he only slept on us, like all his naps, everything. So you're pinned every time, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, sometimes we're made to feel like, oh, just enjoy it. But it's like, no, do you get this is every time and I can't get up. So of course you enjoy holding your baby and stuff. But if that's the only way they sleep, it does become exhausting. So I can relate to that mom that you just said.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
that is exhausting. And I totally lost my train of thought. So anyway, go ahead.
I think you said about adult sleep.
Yeah.
Is what you're asking.
Is it ever too late to consult a sleep coach?
Too late.
Yeah.
No, so I say like never too early, never too late. I personally go until about the age of 6. Different consultants might say different things. Sometimes I've seen like 5 years old, mostly because like that's kind of like where our training goes around up to that age. But again, I think if they're going probably well into school years, like if we're looking at 7, 8, 9, 10, and they're still really struggling, like a child that is just, very poor sleep, maybe some other things could be going on too. So I always say, of course, look outside of what's going on. Maybe consult your pediatrician if there's other things that need to be involved. Because if this is going on for a long, long time, there could be some more to it. So I always say just to look into it a little bit deeper too, if it's like an older kid.
What about adults? Does sleep sense
a really older kid?
What about a really older kid? Does this program work for someone like me?
So not the program itself, because it is for babies, but I think a lot of the fundamentals apply to like having good sleep habits, and like it's funny because I'll talk about this like all day long with kids, and at the end of the day, I think I've told you like, Claire, get off your phone, or why are you still watching the TV?
Yes.
It's kind of listen to your body. If you're tired, like don't push yourself. So this is always something I'm still like working on. But yeah, I think a lot of the basics still can apply. Like just have a good bedtime routine. Sometimes we have things we do that we don't even realize that we do, like setting up our bedroom a certain way, and simple things like brushing your teeth and all that. I mean, you're doing a routine, you're just not really thinking about it. But all those things are telling the mind or signaling the mind to get ready for bed. So yeah, kind of what do they call it? Like good sleep hygiene. Obviously that applies for adults too. So I think Sleep Sense is actually, I haven't looked into it. I think they're doing programs for adult sleep. I just am not educated in that part, but that'd be interesting to have adults go through that and benefit from it.
Might have to look into it, because my friend, she's a nutritionist, tells me that maybe I need to look at my diet. So maybe I need to change the things up.
Yeah, there's so many. Yeah, when I work one-on-one with families, it's the child's diet, what they're eating during the day, their habits. It's extensive for things that you might just need to tweak. Sometimes it is a simple tweak, and it's like, wow, I didn't, could have done that earlier. But sometimes it's a deeper dive. Every family's different, every child's different.
All those differences, man. There's so much nuance to everything,
Yes, for sure.
I like that you said that, though. Is there anything else we're missing that you would like to tell us about Blissfully Rested and Sleep Sense?
No, I think you're going to talk about my handles and where you can find me, but I do offer free evaluation calls. So sometimes obviously one-on-one, you can kind of answer some of those questions. I try to give tips that I can on the phone when we talk one-on-one, but obviously seeing what working together would look like. What does it look like working with a sleep coach? It's interesting because it's not just the first time moms that are looking for this. Actually, most of who I've had, this is like their 3rd, 4th child that they, that they'll look for. And I think it's because sometimes it's like, whoa, my last child, the personality was so different than my other ones. Like, this is not what I was expecting.
Crazy.
Or when you have other kids in the equation too, I think it's like, I need to be on some kind of schedule. I have other young kids to take care of. So it's kind of interesting that it's not always like a first time mom thing that might need this. Sometimes it can be for everyone and benefit everybody on that.
Oh yeah, because what worked for one kid doesn't necessarily work for the other 2 or 3 or 5 or 6, whatever number you're on.
Yeah, when you have multiple, you definitely find that out. It's like, wow, I cannot compare, because a lot of times it's night and day with how they are.
That's so funny. It's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Claire. You can find Claire at blissfullyrested.com. Her Instagram is at blissfully rested, and then your email is Claire at Clare at blissfullyrested.com.
Blissfully Rested.
That's where you can find her. So thank you so much for sharing your little mom journey here and your little sleep escapade that has turned into an unseen profession. I think that's so cool.
Yes. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Anytime.